Hello, beautiful souls. Juliet here. Welcome back to my channel. Before I even touched the cards today, I felt this pressure sit right on my chest, like something had been watching from a distance and finally decided to step closer. I sat with that feeling for a long moment before I picked up my deck, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't. So if you clicked on this video because that title stopped you in your tracks, because some part of you has felt eyes on you that you can't explain, I need you to breathe with me for a second, because what's about to come through is not small. I actually had to shuffle 3 separate times before I sat down to film this, because every time I picked up the deck, the same card kept sliding toward the edge, almost like it wanted to be seen before I even asked a question. I don't ignore that when it happens. I've learned over years of doing this work that when a deck insists on something before you've even framed your intention, it's because the message is urgent, not optional. So I let it lead. And what came through wasn't gentle. It was clear, and it was a little unsettling, in the way truth often is right before it sets you free. There is a specific kind of unease some of you have been carrying, not paranoia, not delusion, something quieter and stranger than that. A sense that certain people, certain rooms, certain circles have been paying very close attention to you, and not because they admire you out loud, because they're afraid of what you might become if you ever realize what you're carrying. I kept hearing the phrase they underestimated you before this reading even started, and underneath that, a colder truth. They know now, and it's shifting how they move around you. Some of you have already started to notice the small tells. A conversation that used to flow freely suddenly feels careful, edited, like the other person is choosing their words instead of simply speaking. A group that used to include you without thinking twice has started leaving gaps, small hesitations before your name gets said out loud. None of it is loud enough to point to directly. That's exactly what makes it so disorienting. You can't argue with a feeling nobody will confirm. But your body knows. Your body has been keeping score this whole time, even while your mind kept trying to explain it away as nothing. So let's not waste another second. Let's find out exactly what they saw, when they saw it, and why it changed everything. The first card I pulled is the Moon, and I want you to sit with this one because it's not a card about danger the way people assume. It's a card about concealment, about things operating beneath a surface that looks calm. When the moon shows up first in a reading like this, it tells me that whatever group, circle, or hidden dynamic we're discussing has been operating in secrecy on purpose, not because they're villains in some dramatic sense, but because exposure would cost them control. I'm sensing this isn't necessarily a robed, candlelit, cinematic cult in the way the word makes you picture. It might be, but more likely this is a closed circle of influence, a friend group with an unspoken hierarchy, a workplace clique that decides who rises and who doesn't. A family branch that guards its secrets like scripture, a spiritual or wellness community that presents itself as open while quietly deciding who gets real access and who gets kept at arm's length. The moon is telling me there has been an inner circle, and for a long time you were positioned just outside of it, watched, measured, never fully let in. And here's the part that matters. I'm feeling like this watching began earlier than you think, possibly around a moment tied to the number 4, whether that's an event in April, the 4th month, a 4th meeting, or something that happened 4 months into a connection. Something shifted there. A test, maybe one you didn't even know you were taking. I keep seeing pale moonlight through water, that silvery reflection that distorts what's really underneath. That's the energy of how they were seeing you back then. Distorted, incomplete. They had a story about who you were, and it was smaller than the truth. I want you to think back, gently, without judgment, to a moment around that time when you were unusually quiet in a room full of people who normally expect you to perform for them. Maybe you didn't laugh at something you were supposed to laugh at. Maybe you didn't rush to fill a silence the way you always used to. Small moments like that get logged by people who are used to predicting you. They notice the second the script changes, even before they understand why. The moon card is telling me that was the very first data point in a pattern they've been quietly tracking ever since, even if none of them would ever admit that out loud, even to each other. The second card is the Queen of Swords, and when she lands after the moon like this, I get chills, because she represents someone who cuts through illusion with unnerving clarity. This could be you. This could also be someone within that circle who first noticed something different about you, someone whose instincts are sharper than everyone else's around her. I'm getting the sense of an initial, maybe an S or a C, someone with a cool, observant energy, someone who doesn't say much but sees everything. If this resonates, this is likely the person who first went back to the group and said something along the lines of, "We misjudged this one." She's the one who planted the first seed of fear, because that's what the Queen of Swords does here. She's not warm, she's precise, and precision is terrifying to people who've built their power on keeping others confused. You confused them by being exactly what you said you were, nothing hidden, nothing performative, and that consistency read as strength they hadn't accounted for. I'm hearing the phrase, "she's not playing the game the way we thought she would." That's when it started. Not with a dramatic confrontation, with a quiet, private recalculation happening behind closed doors, maybe even in a group chat you were never added to. I want to sit with this for one more moment because there's something almost tender underneath the sharpness of this card. The Queen of Swords doesn't fear clarity. She was simply the first one honest enough in that circle to name what everyone else was quietly feeling but too afraid to say. In a strange way, she did you a favor, even if it didn't feel like one. Her honesty is what set this whole chain of events into motion, the moment where pretending you were still small stopped being possible for anyone in that group. Sometimes the person who exposes the shift isn't your enemy. Sometimes she's simply the mirror the rest of them weren't ready to look into yet. Now here's where it deepens. The third card is the Eight of Wands, and this is a card of sudden acceleration, messages flying, decisions being made quickly, energy moving almost too fast to track. When this follows the Queen of Swords, it tells me that once they clocked you as more powerful than they'd assumed, things sped up on their end. There was urgency. Conversations that used to happen slowly, over weeks, started happening in days, sometimes hours. If you felt like the temperature around a certain group changed abruptly, like people got weirdly quick to respond to you, weirdly quick to include you in something, or weirdly quick to exclude you from something else, this is that. The Eight of Wands doesn't lie. Something sped up because they no longer felt like they had the luxury of time. I'm also picking up a scent here, something warm and slightly smoky, like sandalwood mixed with the last edge of a candle just before it burns out. If you've noticed that smell recently in a space that felt tense or even in a dream, pay attention to that. It's tied to this exact energetic shift, the moment the room recalibrated around your presence without anyone saying a word out loud. Let's pull the fourth card because I want to know exactly what they're afraid you'll do with this power now that they know you have it. This one is the Hierophant, reversed. Now, normally the Hierophant is about tradition, institutions, established ways of doing things. Reversed, it becomes about the refusal to conform to those structures, about someone who no longer needs the approval of the established order to know their own worth. This is enormous because it tells me the fear isn't that you'll attack them, it's that you'll simply stop needing them, that you'll walk away from whatever hierarchy they built and be completely fine, maybe even thrive, and that your thriving will expose how unnecessary their whole structure actually was. That is the real fear underneath a fear of a secret society. It's not that you'll destroy them, it's that your indifference will reveal them. People who build closed systems of power depend on everyone believing those systems are the only path to safety, belonging, or success. The second someone proves that's a lie just by living well outside of it, the whole illusion cracks a little. You are that crack. I keep hearing the number 727 come through here, angel numbers of alignment and quiet confirmation that you are exactly where you're meant to be, even without their approval. If 727 or a variation of it has been showing up for you lately, on a receipt, a clock, a license plate, that is not a coincidence. That's your guides underlining this exact message. This is the part of the reading where I want you to really let it land. Structures built on control need everyone inside them to believe the structure is the only source of safety available. That's how any closed group holds itself together, whether it's dressed up as a friendship circle, a family dynamic, a professional inner ring, or something with more formal rituals attached to it. The moment one person proves they can walk away and still be whole, still be safe, still be loved, still succeed, the entire foundation gets a hairline fracture in it that no amount of gatekeeping can fully repair. You didn't set out to be that fracture. You just stopped performing fear, and that alone was enough. If any of this is resonating so far, I want to pause for just a moment. A lot of you reach out to me privately when a reading lands like this one is landing because the general reading gives you the shape of it, but you want the names, the timing, the specific next steps for your exact situation. If that's you, my email is in the description below this video, and I do personalized one-on-one readings where we go much deeper into your particular circle, your particular person, and what's coming for you specifically. I read for people going through exactly this kind of quiet power shift all the time, and I'd be honored to sit with your energy directly. And if you want a slower, more guided process to walk through everything that's surfacing as you step into this next version of yourself, my book, The 30-Day Tarot Self-Healing Journey Return to Yourself, is built exactly for this kind of transition, gently, day by day, without needing anyone else's permission to begin. Both are linked below whenever you're ready. Okay, let's keep going because there's more here and it's getting even more specific. The fifth card is the Three of Swords, and I know that visually this card can look alarming, but I want you to hear how it's actually functioning in this spread. This is the moment of rupture, the moment something painful became undeniable. I believe this represents a specific interaction, maybe even a specific sentence someone said to you that confirmed you were no longer who they thought you were. Maybe you said something in a conversation that was too honest for the room. Maybe you set a boundary that surprised everyone, including yourself. Maybe you simply stopped shrinking in a moment where you used to shrink automatically, and the silence that followed told you everything. I'm hearing a piece of information come through with real specificity, something involving a birthday close to a Scorpio or Pisces placement. Deeply intuitive, deeply private signs, the kind of person who feels things underground long before they say anything about it out loud. If someone in this dynamic has strong water sign energy, they likely felt your shift before anyone else did, on an almost cellular level, and it unsettled them in a way logic couldn't explain. Water signs sense change in the room the way animals sense weather before a storm. That's who clocked you first, even if the Queen of Swords energy from earlier was the one who said it out loud. There's a color coming through strongly here too, a deep wine red, almost the color of old velvet or dried rose petals. If that color has been showing up around you lately, in clothing, in a room, in something someone gave you, it's tied to this exact rupture. It represents the blood memory of an old version of the story ending, the version where you were small, where you were easy to predict, where you didn't threaten anyone's comfort just by existing fully. I know the Three of Swords can feel heavy to sit with, so I want to reframe it gently before we move forward. This card isn't punishing you, it's marking a threshold. Every version of you that has ever grown into something bigger required a moment like this one. A moment where the old shape of the relationship, the old shape of the group, simply couldn't hold the new shape of who you were becoming. The ache you may have felt around this moment wasn't a sign that something went wrong. It was the sound of an old container finally being too small for what it was asked to hold. That kind of ache is sacred, even when it doesn't feel that way in the moment you're living through it. Now let's pull the sixth card because I want to know what happens after this rupture, what they're actually going to do now that they know what you're capable of. This is the Star, and when this card shows up after so much tension, my whole body relaxes because the Star is one of the most protective, most hopeful cards in the entire deck. It tells me that despite whatever fear or strange energy has been circling you, you are being watched over by something far bigger than any group of people who feel threatened by your growth. The Star card is about quiet restoration after chaos, about pouring your own water back into your own cup instead of constantly giving it away to people who never intended to protect you. I'm sensing that whatever this secret circle does next, whether it's distancing itself from you, whether it's suddenly trying to pull you closer to keep an eye on you, whether it's talking about you behind your back in a way that somehow still centers your name in every conversation, none of it will actually diminish you. The Star tells me you're already healing from needing their validation in the first place. This is bigger than them fearing you. This is you quietly outgrowing the need for a seat at their table entirely. I keep seeing the number 111 flash through here, a number of new beginnings, of alignment between what you want and what your soul already knows is true. If you've been seeing 1111 lately, especially at night, especially right before falling asleep, that is confirmation that this exact chapter is closing and a far more expansive one is opening. There's also a scent tied to this card, something floral and slightly green like jasmine right after rain. If that scent has crossed your path recently, even faintly, even somewhere unexpected like a stranger's perfume in a grocery store, that is your higher self reminding you that softness and power are not opposites. You don't have to become hard or guarded to be someone they can no longer control. You just have to keep choosing yourself gently, consistently, the way you'd water a garden you actually intend to keep. I also want to mention, because it feels important, that the Star often shows up for people who are worried that becoming powerful will require them to become cold. That's simply not true, and this card is proof of that. The Star is depicted pouring water freely without fear of running out, without needing to hoard or protect what she has. That's the version of power available to you right now. Not a power that has to guard itself constantly against people who might take from it, but a power so rooted and so naturally replenishing that scarcity stops being the operating fear underneath everything you do. That is the exact opposite of how the circle around you currently operates, and that difference is precisely what unsettles them most. Let's pull one more card because I want to know what your next move should be now that you understand the full shape of what's happening around you. This is the King of Wands, and I love when this card lands to close out a reading like this because it's pure leadership energy, pure magnetic confidence that doesn't need to announce itself to be felt in a room. This card tells me you are stepping or about to step into a version of yourself that leads by presence rather than performance. You won't need to prove anything to the people who doubted you. You'll simply become undeniable, and they'll have no choice but to watch it happen from the outside, exactly where they placed you when they thought you were smaller than you are. I'm getting an initial connected to this card too, something starting with a J or a T, someone in your life, maybe even someone brand new who hasn't entered your story yet, who is going to recognize your power immediately and without any of the fear this current circle has been carrying. This person will feel like sunlight after a long stretch of shadow, someone who doesn't need you to shrink for them to feel comfortable. Hold space for that person. They're closer than you think. There's a fire sign energy wrapped around this whole card, and if you know your chart at all, pay attention to any Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius placements active in your life right now, whether that's someone entering your world or a part of your own chart that's about to get activated by transit. Fire signs don't ask for permission to take up space, and that same unapologetic quality is exactly what's stirring in you right now, even if you've spent years being taught that taking up space made you difficult, too much, or hard to manage. None of that was ever true. It was simply the story people told themselves so they wouldn't have to reckon with how much room you were always meant to take up in this life. I want to talk for a moment about what all of this actually means underneath the imagery, because I don't ever want you to walk away from one of my readings feeling like the takeaway is that people are plotting against you in some dramatic, cinematic way. Sometimes they are, and if your gut has been telling you that loudly and specifically, trust it. Your intuition has earned the right to be believed. But more often, what we're really talking about is this. You changed. Quietly, gradually, in ways that weren't loud enough for anyone to name out loud, but were absolutely loud enough for people to feel. And when people feel a shift in someone they thought they had figured out, their nervous systems respond before their conscious minds do. Some people respond to that shift with curiosity and celebration, but some people respond to it with a kind of low-grade fear, because your growth is quietly asking a question they're not ready to answer. If she can change this much, what does that mean about the parts of myself I've refused to look at? That question is uncomfortable. And instead of sitting with it, some people would rather quietly recalculate how much access to give you, how close to keep you, how much information to share with you, because keeping you slightly unsettled feels safer to them than facing what your growth reflects back at them. That is the real secret society, not robes and candlelight, but the very human, very old instinct to control what we don't understand, especially when what we don't understand used to feel small and safe and is now standing taller than expected. And I think some part of you already knew this before you clicked on this video. I think you've felt the shift in how certain people talk to you, how quickly certain conversations end when you walk into a room, how certain invitations have gotten oddly selective, how certain people who used to overlook you now seem to be tracking your every move a little too closely. You're not imagining it, the cards are confirming it. You are more powerful than they assumed, and now that they know it, they're recalculating everything, while you're simply becoming more of who you already were underneath all that watching. Before I close, I want to give you one more piece of guidance, something practical to carry with you after this video ends. When you feel that low hum of being observed, whether it's real or residual, whether it's from this specific circle or an old wound about being seen that this situation is simply reactivating, place your hand over your sternum and take one slow breath, just one. Say quietly, even in your mind, I don't need anyone's permission to keep becoming who I already am. That single sentence, repeated whenever this fear rises, will do more to protect your energy than any amount of confrontation or explanation ever could. You don't owe anyone a performance of smallness just because your growth made them uncomfortable. I keep hearing one final thing come through as I lay these cards out in front of me, a closing message from whatever guides have been walking with you through this whole video. They underestimated the beginning of your story. They will not get to witness the middle of it up close, because you are already walking toward a version of your life they were never invited into. Let them wonder, let them whisper, let them recalculate behind closed doors. None of that changes the truth sitting quietly in your chest right now. The truth this reading was only here to confirm. You were never too much. You were simply early, and they are only now catching up to what your soul has known about you all along. Say this with me if you feel called to, out loud or in your mind, wherever you're sitting right now. I release the need to be small so that others feel comfortable. I trust the power that has been quietly building inside me. I am not afraid of being fully seen, and I no longer need anyone's permission to keep rising. And so it is. Thank you so much for sitting with me through this reading today. If this resonated, please remember my email is in the description if you'd like a personal reading of your own, and my book is there too if you want a gentle daily companion for exactly this kind of transformation. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next video.